Hello, today I'll be going over music intervals and how to find the interval between two notes. So for definition, what an interval is, it's the distance between two notes. Um, and to begin with, we need to understand that music spans through 7 letters, A through G. So let's write that down first. A, B, C, D, E, F, and then G. And it continues to repeat. So we have A, B, C, and so on. Now, between these letters, we have things called sharps and flats. Basically, what a sharp is, it raises a note by a half step. On the other hand, a flat lowers a note by a half step. So, for example, if we start with A, when we're raising A by a half step, we call this A sharp. Now, if we start with B and we go back a half step, we call this B flat. These two pitches are identical but have different names. We call these two pitches enharmonic pitches. Now, as you see right here, I wrote no B sharps, E sharps, C flats, and F flats. This is because B sharp is the same thing as C, E sharp is the same thing as F. So for technicality and simplicity, we will not be considering B sharp and E sharp and C flat and F flat. So that being said, one half step from B is just C. There's no B sharp. So moving on, we have, if we start from C and you raise it by half step, we call this C sharp. And if we lower it by a half step, starting from D, we call this a D flat. Do you get the pattern now? Right? Now, between D and E, we can call this a D sharp, or we can call it an E flat. Again, these are called enharmonic pitches. And then again, since we don't have E sharp, we will not be considering E sharp. So the half step from E to F, or sorry, the one half step from E is just F. So goes directly to F. Now for F to G, we have, between F and G, we have F sharp or G flat. And it continues on. And I hope you understand the pattern by now. Okay, the table below shows the different types of intervals. The interval is found by the number of half steps. So for example, the first one, it's one half step, and we call that a half step, right? And it's represented by lowercase m and 2, where lowercase m means minor, let's write that, minor, and then capital M means major. So starting with 2 half steps, we call that a whole step, and it's represented with capital M2. 3 half steps, we have a minor third, which is lowercase m3. 4, we call it a major third. 5, we call it a perfect fourth, so it's different. Now 6, we have augmented fourth, or a diminished fifth, or it's also known as a tritone, and I'll be going over the differences in this video. And 7, we call this a perfect fifth, and we can keep going down. 8 is minor 6, 9 is major 6, 10 is minor 7th, 11 is major 7th, and 12 is an octave. And the ones boxed up in red, I highly recommend you guys to memorize, because if you know these specific ones, I believe you can know the rest as well. So now I'll be going over how to calculate or how to find the intervals between two notes. So let's start with an example. Let's start with a half step. So example of half step, right? Remember, a half step is like the smallest distance between two notes. So example of a half step would be like A to A sharp, or let's say C sharp to D. And let's try another one. Let's try G. One half step would be A flat, I think. Yeah, A flat, or it's also known as G sharp. Okay, that was pretty easy, right? Now we can move on to an example of a perfect fourth. And basically what a perfect fourth is, it's 5 half steps. So let me try doing that. Perfect fourth. An example would be from C to F. So we can do, since we start on C, we're going to keep going down. C, after C we have C sharp. After C sharp we have D, then D sharp. Then we have E, and remember we don't consider E sharp, so we have F next. And then if we count the number of letters right after the first one, so we don't count the first one, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that is how we know how many letters are between C and F, and how we know this is a perfect fourth interval. Okay, now let me go over the difference between an augmented fourth and a diminished fifth. So based off the table, we have an example of C to F sharp to F sharp. So we can start from C, then we have C sharp. After C sharp, we have D, then D sharp, then E, then F, then F sharp. Remember this tritone has, an augmented fourth has 6 half steps. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then how we can tell if it's an augmented fourth or a diminished fifth is by counting seeing how many letters are present. So we have C, we have D, E, and F. We only have 4 letters in total. So we call this an augmented fourth because it only has 4 letters. Now let's try for example, a diminished fifth. Example would be C to G flat. So let's try that. C to G flat. So I have C sharp. So we start with C, then we go to C sharp. Then after C sharp, we have D, D sharp, E, then F. Then after F, we have an F sharp, but it's also known as a G flat. So write that down, right? Because those are enharmonic pitches. And if we count the number of count the number of letters, we have one C. We have one C, one D, E, F, and G. So in total, we have 5 different letters. So this is how we can tell the difference between an augmented fourth and a diminished fifth by counting the number of letters. Okay, below are listed 4 example problems. I highly recommend you guys to pause the video and try these out for yourself. In a couple of seconds, I will reveal the answer. So here are the answers for the following examples below. The first one is a minor third. The second one is a perfect fifth. The third one is a half step. And the fourth one is an augmented fourth. And this is the end of this video. If you have any questions, feel free to comment down below. Thank you for watching and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.